Hello, welcome to DNA Hardwired, common sense turned upside down. My name is Pop, and with me are my guests, Jackie and Michael. We were going to have a third guest, but he wasn't able to make it. So it's just going to be myself, Pop, Jackie, and we have a new guest, Michael. So let's go ahead and get started with this thing here. Let me make sure I get my ducks in a row, so to speak. Here, let me see here. All right, again, like I said, welcome to another episode. We used to have two other co-hosts, Nikki and Dr. Tammy. They're not going to be on this podcast as regularly. They're now hosting a new podcast, which is actually on my first book, which was titled a Relationship Pocket Guide Written for Women by Men. The podcast is going to be called A Relationship Pocket Guide Written for Women by Men, and then her response. You can look that podcast up too on some of your regular podcast apps. Thank you for joining us for another exciting episode on Common Sense. So what we're going to do on this episode is we're going to talk about language. We decided to cover language because in the not too distant future, we're going to actually start talking about communicating or communication. And language is a very fundamental part of communication. So we wanted to make sure we got a pretty good feel for this thing called language first. I'm going to go over a few definitions and technical terms. So if you could, just bear with me initially. First of all, I like to define certain words. So language is defined as a structured system of communication that consists of words, grammar, and vocabulary, and it's required in communication. So one more time, language is defined as a structured system of communication that consists of words, grammar, and vocabulary, and is required in communication. Language is the words, the pronunciation, the methods of combining them in order to be understood, and it's used by people and their community to communicate. We use language in our daily lives to convey information to each other. And one of the main reasons I really wanted to cover language, besides the fact that we're going to talk about communication, is because I really want to reevaluate my understanding of language because of my observation of its use in some recent situations. And I like to refer to this as something I call it the language slip. So that's another reason I really want to cover it. I also want to, in order to understand language and the words used in our language, there are some credible and reputable dictionaries for the English language. Some of the most reputable and credible there's the Oxford English Dictionary, there's the Cambridge Dictionary, and then there's the Merriam-Webster's Dictionary. I'm referring to those sources so that some of the words that we're going to use, some of the terms that we're going to use, if you're looking for a reputable source, that's what I would recommend. Now, there are some other sources out there, but they're not necessarily as reputable or credible. I'd also, since the foundation of this podcast series is on common sense, I'd like to restate what the definition that we're going to go by as far as common sense goes. There's many definitions, but the one I like is this one, the following one. Common sense: knowledge that most people should know or possess, except babies and those with mental challenges. Again, common sense is knowledge that most people should know or possess, except babies and those with mental challenges. I've heard many people say there's really no such thing as common sense. Look up in those three reputable dictionaries that I cited. Look up the words common sense, and if it's listed there, that means that it does exist. Okay, anyway, um, in my preparation for this episode on language, I received some feedback from some sources, which indicated to me that I probably should have an expert to clarify the definition and meaning of some of the terms we'll be using on this episode. So I contacted a friend of mine who's a lawyer. They've been practicing law for over 25 years. I really wanted to have them on the podcast, but they weren't able to make it in person. So what I did was I sent them some questions, and they answered the questions in writing. And so we'll go over those some of those questions and some of those terms. What I'll do, this lawyer person, I'll just refer to them as counselor, and the questions that we're going to talk about in the statements, there is not a legal advice thing. This person is not giving any legal advice. They're just basically clarifying some definitions and meanings of some of the terms we will be discussing. Counselor, is there one of the questions I asked the counselor was, Counselor, is there anything you would like to add at this time? And the counselor's response is, nothing other than to clarify that these statements are my own personal opinions based upon my experience as a lawyer with over 25 years experience practicing law. And thank you for allowing me the opportunity to contribute. So that was the counselor's written response. Is there anything that our two guests might want to say at this time, Michael or Jackie? At present, no. Okay. What about you, Jack?
Right now, nothing.
Okay, that's right, because I really haven't given you guys much to go on right now, so I get it. Okay.
So based off your language, my answer is no.
Okay. Okay. All right. And right now, I'm sure that folks are kind of wondering, what the hell's going on? What are we talking about here? As we get a little deeper into this, it'll become a lot more clear to you. Okay. The first term or word I would like to address is the term or word law. So I pose this question to the counselor as far as their definition of the word law. So this is what I wrote to the counselor. Counselor, defining law as a rule usually made by a government that states how people may and may not behave in a society, and often orders particular punishments if they do not obey an appropriate is that an appropriate definition? So the counselor's response was, yes, I would agree that the definition, with one caveat, to appropriately be termed a law. The rules must come from a governing authority. Otherwise, the rules we agree to be bound by are really just various forms of voluntary contracts. So it must come, in order for it to be law, it has to come from a governing authority. An example might be the difference between conduct that could get you fired at work. If you are late to work too many times in a row, you may lose the privilege of being employed by your boss. But if you empty the company bank account on the way out the door, you could be charged with a crime. In other words, a violation of law, in addition to losing your paycheck. There may be a consequence to your bad behavior, but only one of those examples actually comes with a risk to your personal liberty. In other words, breaking the law. So any questions on that, guys? The lawyer's definition of what a law is. Does that kind of sound okay to you?
If I'm following correctly, it's basically saying that it only becomes a law if a predetermined governing body has been tasked to make it.
Yes, that's pretty much it.
Okay.
Okay.
I can agree with that.
Okay. So the next term I'd like to address is code in reference to law. Okay. And so this is the definition that I have, which is code generally refers to a systematic collection of laws, rules, or regulations, often organized by subject matter. It can also refer to the process of arranging laws into such a collection. Codes can be official, like the United States USC, United States Code, commonly referred to as USC, or unofficial, like those published by commercial legal publishers. So this is counsel, does that sound like an appropriate statement about codes in relationship to law? This is the counselor's response. It's a little bit longer, but I'm gonna try to read as best I can here. I'm trying not to bore you folks. I know right now at this point it's kind of boring, but we'll take my word for it. We're going to get there. Counselor's response. Yes, again, with one caveat. My counselor loves these caveats. To be enforceable by the government, the code must be an official source of law. Okay. And to be enforceable by the government, the code must be an official source of law. In the United States, we generally refer to our code by other names. There's statutes, there's regulations, and I'm not going to really go into defining all of those. Under those, you can expect to see local codes, ordinance, and regulations that are promulgated by the cities, towns, and counties where we live. Those local ordinances are only enforceable within the geographic boundaries of the municipalities that adopted them. Otherwise, again, with the force and effect of law, you're really talking about various suggestions on how the law should be adopted or interpreted. For instance, political interest groups may come up with model laws or acts and then lobby state and local legislators to adopt them as laws. These organizations can create the model laws they want, all the model laws, but until a jurisdiction has actually adopted them as a law and put them in their statutes or code, the government can't sanction you for failing to act in accordance with them. Another question for the counselor is, can legal codes be considered law? Counselor's response, if appropriately adopted by a governing body, yes. Can the federal state, go ahead, Jackie.
No, I just said, okay, I'm listening.
Okay. And like I said, I know this is all boring stuff right now, but I got to get here to get to what I want to talk about. Can the federal, state, county, city, or local government establish laws to mandate a person to acquire and maintain a driver's license or register vehicles in order to legally drive on the roadways? Right now, let me kind of stop here for a quick second. I start off earlier talking about my reasoning for wanting to talk about language and words and this type of thing. One thing I forgot to tell you, and I'm going to tell you this at this point. Hopefully, it'll make things a little bit clearer to you. I have a friend who or wouldn't, they don't consider themselves to be a sovereign citizen, but they do have some sovereign beliefs. And so one of those beliefs is that there is no law that mandate that you have to have a driver's license or mandate that you have to have your vehicle registered. And so I know that there's many folks out there who kind of have this thought process, this belief. They have this sovereign, the sovereign citizen type of mentality. But anyway, so the question to the counselor was, can the federal, state, county, city, or local governments establish laws to mandate persons to acquire and maintain a driver's license or register their vehicles in order to legally drive on the roadways? Counselor's response: yes, they can, with the acknowledgement that the different levels of government have different roles to play in how our roads and highways are regulated. In the United States, we have decided that the authority to give or take away driver's licenses and the administration of vehicle registration is mostly a state government issue as opposed to the federal or local government. However, the processes involved in obtaining a driver's license is also partially controlled by federal law. This is a good example of the jurisdictional interplay we experience as part of our everyday lives, often unknowingly. Again, I'm not going to really get too much deeper into that. I just want to make sure that the listeners understand, especially some of the listeners who may want to follow this sovereign ideology and maybe just want to totally try to disregard some of the laws that govern our everyday lives. Uh, I just want to make sure that they understand that there actually are laws that govern this. I'm going to stop for a second here. Jackie, Michael, any comments?
Well, Mike, I just
Yes, sir. First and foremost, I mean, I've been around for a while, and I've heard various sides of that people saying the very same thing. I've never seen anyone legally fight having to have a driver's license or tax on your car. I've never seen one person legally fight that and win. I've heard the arguments about it's a code, it's not law, you can win in court. I've never seen one individual fight that and win from whatever sect they came from. If it was the We the People sect, Moorish Temple sect, I've never seen one person fight it and win. All I've seen is there's more trouble, legal fees, you get in court, you're tied up for a while, and in the end, you lose. But I still hear ramblings of you can get away with it, but it's just not something, me personally, it's not something that I would want to try to fight. You just respect the laws of the land. And it's simple as that.
Okay.
That's just my
Okay. Any thoughts on this, Jackie?
I'm with Michael. I've heard people talk about starting systems. I'll be the person to say I don't know too much about it other than the bits and pieces that I've heard. But from what I do know, from what I've seen and heard, even if they have legitimate ground to be that, I think our system in this country is so. I think it's so tight. You're not gonna fight that. You're not gonna win when you go up against the federal government or when you go up against the government too. You're not gonna win. So what my question to anyone that says that they are sovereign citizens, they don't want to drive a license, they don't want to register your car. What is the desired outcome? What is what are you looking to gain on the other side? Because on the onset of it, it looks like you just want to have some discourse in your life, and this is the hill that you chose to land on. And I think that's too much of a headache to move forward in life. We got too many issues that need to be addressed, and we're worried about who's not driving license and just let the rest of the car. I could be wrong, and if I am, I stand to be corrected. I'm open to that. But some things are not worth. One of my coworkers, I tell them all the time, some things are not worth your voice. If you don't need to put your voice on everything, on every situation that pops up in your life. That's the job doing.
Okay.
I laugh.
Okay. I think there's maybe one other term I want to mention, and that one is on income tax. These same folks talk about there's no law that requires them to pay the income tax. Well, again, there are laws that require, mandate that U.S. citizens pay various forms of tax, property tax, uh, uh, merchandise, paying taxes on merchandise, personal income taxes. So there are laws that govern this. I have a question for folks who first of all would even question whether or not we should pay taxes. Now, I will say this: I agree with some of the folks that say that we do pay a lot of taxes. We pay a lot of taxes, and I also agree that a lot of our tax dollars are not spent wisely. I don't know how much that parade the president just had. I don't know how many millions of dollars that cost, but that was taxpayer dollars. I mean, was that something that was put to good use? I mean, I use that as an example, but there's many more examples. Um, but anyway, so taxes. So my question is, um, uh, first of all, what is a tax? It's a contribution to state revenue or federal imposed by the government on workers' income and business profits, or added to the cost of some goods, services, and transactions. That's basically what a tax is. The purpose of the tax is to generate revenue. This revenue uh, uh, helps with the national defense, infrastructure like roads, bridges, public transportation, law enforcement, education, a ton of other services that our tax dollars contribute to. And now this is a question for the listeners, but they're not responding. So I'm going to ask Michael and Tony, if you could, uh, not Tony, but Michael and Jackie.
Okay.
Could you tell me? Now I'm going to ask you to kind of get inside of some people's heads, but how do you think these people might think if we don't pay taxes? How how are we supposed to have these services and some of these things? What do you think these people might be thinking?
Well, for one, I believe we pay way too much in taxes period. I'm one of the ones that think we pay too much in taxes. Anytime a politician gets on TV, we talking about lowering taxes. They're not talking about lowering your taxes as an employee. They're talking about lowering your taxes as an employer. So the business owners get the tax breaks in this country. You know that the tax laws, tax codes, they were written for business owners. They were not written for the 9 to 5 period. Now, this is years ago, and don't quote me on this right here. But when I did begin to do some research down this road on whether income tax was legal, this, that, and other. If I remember correctly, it was only that the tax to citizens was only supposed to last a short amount of time. If I'm not mistaken, it was 5-6 years, somewhere in that time frame. But then,
I think you're right, but the government the government had the right to extend that. So I think that's what happened. But go ahead.
And I understand that. So that's why I could 100% be wrong. But it was supposed to last for a short period of time. But the government is no different than the airline a couple years ago, 10, 15, 20 years ago, when they began to charge for bags. Once they started getting their money, they're not turning it loose.
They ain't going back.
So they're not going back, no matter what we think it is. So I think there needs to be more transparency potentially when it comes to where your tax dollars are going.
I agree.
It's a lot of shady things going on behind the scenes.
Right.
And if we ran our personal budgets within our household, like the federal government runs their budget, we try to be bankrupt every year. So,
Yeah.
with that being said, I think we got to have more transparency.
Yeah, and the government, speaking of bankrupt every year, the balance don't the budget don't balance, so they bankrupt every year too. So you're right.
They bankrupt every year. Correct. They are bankrupt every year. So now to get inside their head, if I can, on the demographic that want to be sovereign citizens. See, you don't want to be taxed, but you want good roads.
Yes.
You don't want to be taxed, but you want the fire department to be on call just in case it's your house.
Yes.
Your house is on fire.
Yes.
You want the police department to be on call, not on call when you need 911.
Yes.
Well, how do you think those services are being paid for?
Exactly.
You want clean water. You want clean air. Where do you think that money comes from? It does come from your tax dollars.
Right.
The quality of life that you have, to a certain degree, comes from your tax dollars.
Right.
And so you can't have one without the other. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
We got countries around this world that operate like that, and they are trash countries. Call it what you want. They
yes.
Are just that. I'm like, but we ain't got to agree with the guy that's in office all the time. But some countries are shithole countries.
Yes.
That's just what they are.
Yes. Yes. And you brought up a good point. Because I did some research on that. Or my question was, are we the only country in the world that taxes citizens? And what I found was basically what you just said, Jackie. The countries that don't tax do a search. The countries that don't tax their citizens, I wouldn't necessarily call them all shithole countries, but I'll tell you, their standards of living are far lower than that of ours. Also, what you'll find is a lot of those countries don't even have a military. They don't even have a military. There was a couple of them on the list that may have had a military, but it wasn't worth speaking of because they had no way to fund it really. So yes, very good point. Okay, so for those folks that are listening and that may have a different take on this this tax thing, if they think that there is a country out there that would be a very good example of a country that doesn't tax its citizens and still have the positive way of life that we have, please, I'm anxious to hear that, and I'd be more than willing to voice it on this podcast.
Let me interject something right here, Bob, on that. The wonderful thing, or one of the best things, I didn't say it's wonderful or not, but one of the best things that we have at our disposal is just our ability to learn. So instead of going against what the tax code is, saying it shouldn't be there, how about you understand what it is and learn how to operate within it?
Right. Very good point.
So now you educate yourself, and now you can position yourself to where you don't necessarily get hit with all the taxes. If you remember, what was this, 12, 14 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever it was, when Mitt Romney was running for president. And everyone around him wanted to say, well, he didn't pay that much in taxes. He made over $200 million. His net worth was over $200 million. Well, if you understand money and the tax code, you understand that wasn't earned income. That was capital gains income. That's taxed at a 20% rate. He's at no point in time would he ever be hit with a 39.9%, 39.6 or whatever tax rate. You're only going to get hit with 20% capital gain.
Right.
So he's put himself in a position, and a lot of wealthy people, not even just wealthy people, a lot of average people, because they don't be all looking, but a lot of just average people have put themselves in position to take advantage of the tax code as opposed to trying to stand up and say how wrong it is.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that there's not aspects of it that doesn't need to be revamped, changed, or worked on to help benefit some of the lower people on the income scale. I'll give you that.
Right.
But for the most part, you can't begin to change something unless you're on the inside and know the inner workings of it. I can't come outside your business box and say hire more black people. Well, I need to get in understanding where it's working inside before and then begin to make the change from the inside, not from the outside. It's not going to happen that way.
Right. Any thoughts, Michael?
lot of what he said, I do believe, like we discussed before, with taxes, obviously the tax code is complex, but it's a way to play the game where you can you can pay less taxes legally.
Yes.
And it's more so geared toward owning a business,
Yeah.
investment. And that's just knowing that. The problem, I think, is the average American, I don't care what gender, race, whatever, the average American don't study that. They don't know that. They're trying to make it every day, 9 to 5, and they get hit with taxes, and they look at the rich who are legally through loopholes paying less taxes. You look at the government, politicians paying less taxes, that they're privy to all of that. So people are frustrated, people get upset, just probably so. And I've heard the same deals where you don't legally have to pay taxes. I think what I initially heard about it years and years ago was that I think that they were saying the 13th Amendment wasn't ratified or something like that. And again, I know some. I don't know it all. So please, if I'm wrong, correct me. And my argument has always been that's a losing battle because even if all that is true, I've never seen again case law where anybody has ever beat the government on that note. Nobody that I've ever read or seen any kind of case law that any precedent where you can go into court and cite this case where they beat the government and they legally don't have to pay taxes. I've never seen that. I don't know it all. But I think it's people being frustrated, don't have money, and the government said it takes. But Brother Bada has a good point. With void of us paying taxes, everything that we've known to have that make America America and what we come to expect and want and conveniences, we won't have. They won't exist. So it has to be, I mean, we got to be somewhere in the middle. Yes, some things need to change. Do I think the government at present wants to or will look into it? No, we got to create something where people become knowledgeable. You learn how to legally pay less taxes. But at the same time, you have some kind of lobby interest that it gets that looked at where things is fair. But it's again, pick the battles. That's not a battle that you want.
Right.
Pay taxes, find ways to legally pay less taxes, and that's how I do it now. And I think that works best for me right now. And that's pretty much the only option you really got right now.
Right. And
I think too many times people want to. It's that run or whatever. You want to set it and forget it. It doesn't work that way. Right. It doesn't work that way. It's not a set it and forget it. What works, like even with Mike. Mike, what works today for you from a tax standpoint may not work next week. Exactly. Next year. So your personal finances are living and breathing organisms. When I was still living in Phoenix, I said this for years. The hardest when I became a stockbroker. I was a stockbroker in Arizona, 2000. The hardest conversations I had to have was Fridays in the barbershop, on Friday and Saturdays in the barbershop. When I'm talking to people, share around reflection. Like, bro, we're looking at this money thing wrong. I'm coming from banking and finance. We're looking at this wrong. People that got money, they move totally different with that money. They don't move how you think they move. People got with I'll say $500,000 sitting in the bank. That's liquid. Or people with $2 million. I literally used to walk outside the bank, and after I pull up a person's account, they got $2 million sitting in there. I walk outside, they driving a Honda Accord. Wait a minute, hold up. That's not the image that I saw that a person that had that kind of income or that kind of money would do.
Right.
So you begin to change when you know it's not kind of like the Bible. When you do it when you're a kid, you do it as a kid. When you become an adult, you put away child's ways.
Right.
So we have to grow in this space. It's not something that you're gonna know overnight. You'll spend the rest of your life learning these tax codes and the benefits of them to you.
Right.
So as we move down that road, I have a responsibility to pass it on to my children, to pass it. If I learn something new, we're in the middle of a conversation, you say something and say, oh, man, that sparked something. Hey, Pop, I just learned this. Then go check this out. Mike, I'm in the conversation, you do the same thing. And from that, we begin to branch out. I showed 2 people what I know. You guys can go tell 5, and then those 5 can get it. That's the way we spread information out. You got to do your research and due diligence. A lot of times we don't do it, or we don't even pass on the information.
Right.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Right.
So I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you didn't cut me off. It's good. All good comments. And some of these things that we're talking about, law and code and taxes, Social Security, whatever. Some of these things we're talking about, like I said, it struck a chord with me because I was in a conversation with a friend, who had some different ideas about these things, and I just wanted to take a minute to talk to that because and also it ties into language, because there are certain things that need to exist in order for language, effective language, to occur in communication. And if we're looking at things like taxes and some of these other things that we're talking about, and we don't we have a different definition of them, then it's going to be just like you were just saying, Jackie, about passing information on. If you don't have a good idea or good knowledge of what you're talking about, you're going to be passing on inappropriate information. Just like you said, Jackie, you come outside the barbershop and there's this guy driving his Honda Accord. That doesn't translate. He got $2 million in the bank. How does that make sense? What kind of language is that? How much common sense does that make? So we need to be able to understand some of the simplest terms, some of the simplest words, in order to be effective when we're trying to utilize language and pass it on in the form of communication. Now, some of the things that we don't think about as far as language, and in order for it to be effective, some of the things that need to exist is language needs to be concrete and specific. We don't want to be vague about things. Language needs to be concrete and specific, concise, not wordy, familiar, precise, clear, constructive. Appropriately. When I was doing my research, these are some of the things that I saw as far as language and what was required. But I'll tell you, one of the things, and it kind of gets back to this thing with uh, sovereign citizens and some other stuff going on, politics. One of the things that I did not see as a requirement for language in order for it to be effective is I was really surprised to see nowhere did I see that, first of all, there should be an understanding and agreement among the users of the language on the meaning of the words used in the language in order for communication to be effective. Do you hear what I'm saying? We need to have an understanding and an agreement among the users of the language on the meaning of the words used in the language in order for communication to be effective. And I think that's.
So
go ahead.
So basically, you're saying that we have to basically agree on the definition of whatever it is we're discussing.
Yes.
Whatever kind of put down.
Yes. If we're going to be able to communicate effectively among each other, if that's why some of these words I wanted to talk about, and some of these dictionaries that these words are listed in with common definitions, if we can't agree on that, if we can't agree that we as U.S. citizens need to pay taxes and understand why. If we can't agree that we as citizens need to have our driver's license and have our vehicles license. I'm just using this as an example. There's a lot of other things that we can talk about as far as the reasons that we have problems with language. We've got, I think I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, Nikki and Dr. Tammy, they're doing another podcast prior to this one. It's on relationships. And I'll tell you, I wrote a book on relationships, a relationship pocket guide written for women by men. So they're doing a podcast on it called the Relationship Pocket Guide written for women by men. Her response, and I'll tell you, I was just amazed that you guys should listen to it. I was just amazed at what these two women were saying about why men and women have a tendency having a problem communicating. Here we go, right? Talking about language, talking about communicating. And it was just amazing for me as a man who wrote a book on this, how blind I was to some of the things that they were talking about, because I really hadn't listened to women. Listened, key word. I really hadn't listened to what women's thoughts were on communicating with us men. It was very enlightening. So I really hope you guys listen to that podcast. But
I'm gonna listen to that.
Look, I know you go.
I'm gonna listen to that.
I have to be honest with you. I'm gonna have to be honest with you. I was getting all emotional listening to it because it just hit a chord with me on how important it is, language, communication, how important it is for us to have an agreement and an understanding of language and communicating, and when you don't have a really good understanding of that or acceptance of it, that's what they talked about too, is that sometimes we men and women, when we're involved in these conversations with the other sex, how sometimes we just don't agree on these words. We're using the same, like they checked me, Jackie. They checked me, brother. In the book, I use the word bitchy, about women being bitchy. Man, they checked me on that. They checked
Some of
me.
them are.
Well, see, here we go. Here you are a man. You see, that's how we seeing it. But they saw it as something else. And when I heard them say that, what did my but they heard us saying something else about them. It had something to do with us not accepting what they were feeling. I think it has something to do with that. Here they were expressing language to us, words to us, thoughts to us. They're communicating to us feelings, and our response was, or my response in the book was, we men in general see that as bitching, and they're at a whole different emotional level. And so that hit me. I'm gonna look at that differently in the future, I think. But anyway, yeah, you definitely gonna have to listen to it, Jackie, and I encourage you to listen to it too, Mike, and the rest of the listeners.
I'm gonna listen to that because okay.
Right.
I'm not gonna get on my soapbox right now.
Right.
I'm feeling triggered at this point. I need old fashioned.
And again, this is this thing of language and communication. I mean, it just spills over into all areas of our lives. And I think if we don't have a relatively good understanding of some basics, then that's where we have problems. And again, that's why I was saying that it's very, very important that we, as the users of language, agree, have an understanding and agreement of the words that's being used in this language. When we don't have an understanding or agreement, then that'll definitely cause some problems in communication. And like I said, today, I mean, I've got this thing where I call the language slip. There's just some words that that seem to me like they just done came out of nowhere, and people are using these words today. For me, I don't totally understand some of the language that's being used, so I don't agree with it, and so now I'm having a problem.
Can you throw something? Can you throw something out there?
I'll give you one. I'll give you one. One of the words that kind of set me off is something called alternative facts. Have you heard that term before?
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah. When do you remember the first time you heard that word, or what it related
I
to?
don't remember the first. I don't remember the first time I was situated, but it's only been in the last probably 2 or 3 years that word has come up.
Yeah.
All that tells me, you want me to not see what I've seen.
Right. Well,
like go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
I go back to that Rodney King video. Right. Back in 1991, 92, whatever that was, 93. Like, LA sheriff's office out there was asking the general public to not see what they were watching on video. Oh, we wasn't beating him. He was attacking us. Like, nah. There's alternative facts right here. It's right here in front of your eyes. But you get a bunch of lawyers in there, which is one of my issues with the law profession. Like, you put a bunch of lawyers together, and you can't come up with you can't nail anything down because it's all subjective and all this right here. Some things are black and white, and we've gotten away from some of this. There's some things that are just black and white, and I don't determine what's black and white. Don't get me wrong, but we gotta start with the layers. Everything has 99 different layers. But if that's the case, then we're never going to make any progress. Some things that's is just inappropriate. It's wrong. I'm a 54-year-old man. I go out there and touch inappropriately touch a child. I don't care what the reason is. It's wrong. Period.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
But we act like we if I inappropriately touch a woman, that's wrong. It doesn't matter the reason why. So I think we need to get back to some black and white things. But when we begin to say, well, this could be true in this, in this could be different in this scenario. Like, no, bro. No.
Yeah.
So that's part of my issue when we started this thing. And I went through 3 weeks ago what you just described. I'm at the job and I talked with my boss. I work for a female, and one of the girls I just hired up under me. I said in the meeting, it was with my boss and I, that there's an attitude that's there, and she took offense to it. And my boss said, Jack, I understand why you said it, but you have to be mindful of the language that you choose. And okay, that's fine. She said, because this is how I'm a woman. This is how I see it. This is what we hear. And she said, I get where you're coming from. I'm the only girl with all my brothers, and they always said I had an attitude. So I understand where you're coming from as a man. This is what a woman hears. But this is my thing. My pushback to this was, if everybody's saying the same thing, they're not always the problem. Some of that is the person in the mirror that's pushing back against what's being said.
Okay.
And we got to get out of our feelings because you don't like what's being said. Well, if you don't like what's being said, change the way you move. You change the story.
Okay.
So you got to check yourself first. I have to check me first, my actions first. Am I what's being said about me? Is that me? And be objective with that. And a lot of times, men and women, we don't do that. So you begin to live in this box that you built about yourself, and you think, or you surround yourself with people of like mind. So you only talking to people in the echo chamber. Everybody's saying the same thing bouncing off the wall.
Yeah.
So you don't believe anything different than what's being bounced off the wall.
So let me ask you two guys a question. You asked me to give you an example, Jackie, and I gave you alternative facts.
Alternative facts. Alternative facts.
Do you think there's such a thing as alternative facts?
No, a fact is a fact.
What about you, Michael?
How can
I agree with Jackie. A fact is a fact. However, I believe context
Yeah.
is everything.
Yeah.
One thing I think about, and I was, what was I? What was probably in high school at the time? Bill Clinton, with the whole, if you remember, the whole, exactly. And they asked him, and they asked him, did you have sex with that woman? Well,
question your definition?
Absolutely. Now, Cliff Bill looked in the camera as president in the Oval Office, had his finger working. I did not have sex with that woman. And Pop, me and you spoke similar in the gym to this. In law, cases are won and lost on words and definition of words. And different settings you're in and with different people, words can mean different things. So I think it's important to talk to all kinds of people and know how to, if you're going to communicate effectively with everybody all the time. And it's something that has learned over time. Know how to talk to your audience, the right words to use to get the response you want out of them. So alternative facts, I mean, I don't like that term.
Well,
I guess if you slick with it, you can say, well, I always agree. A fact is always a fact. But people look at things now and see two totally different things. And I work in the science field, and you got females that work there, and I'm working there, and we dealing with a patient that's probably having a hard time, probably going to hurt somebody or try to hurt themselves, and the reason behind it, and we interpret it totally different. But we're trying to help the patient, so we're at a stalemate because we both have the same idea. We want to help the patient, but what I believe is going to help based off my facts of what I'm seeing and how I internalize it is totally different from my coworker. So other alternative facts, I mean, depending on how you look at it and if you want to go down that rabbit hole, but the gist is, I think it's only it's only one fact. What makes the alternative is how the person who's determining it was fact, how they read and how they look into it. And you can twist that to fit any kind of agenda. And I think that's where it all comes from. People trying to twist things to fit their agenda or trying to get something across and still, seem right.
Yeah.
So, and that's where I initially heard it.
Yeah.
So I don't recall the exact detailed situation, but the gist of it was somebody who was having an argument, a debate, and they were trying to twist it.
Yeah. So let me
their agenda.
Yeah. Let me tell you where it came from. It was January 22nd, 2017. Kellyanne Conway, she was the counsel to President Trump at the time.
Right.
And she came to the defense of Mr. Spicer. And it was the first time I think it was ever really ever used. But to tell you the truth, when she explained, here's what Mr. Spicer had said, and she had used the term alternative facts. Mr. Spicer had said that he was referring to an audience witnessed by President Trump's inauguration. He said, let me see here. What did he say here? He had said that uh, uh, the inauguration, basically, it had the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration. That's what Mr. Spicer said. So Kellyanne, she used that comment. But I'll tell you, I don't know if you guys heard her response to why she used that comment, but here's some of the responses that she used, and I want you to think about. I want you to think about after hearing these, whether or not you will still believe that there's no such thing as an alternative fact. One of the things she said was that uh, 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 2 plus 2 is 4, right? That's a fact, right? Well, an alternative to that is 3 plus 1 is also 4. Both of them are 4. She used the statement, it's partly cloudy and it's partly sunny. Those are two facts. She said the glass is half full, the glass is half empty. Both of those are facts, right? The 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 problem though is that if Spicer had said this was among one of the largest audience to ever witness, that could have been an alternative fact. But he didn't say it was one of. He said it was the, and it wasn't. That was a lie. So, uh, but this is one of the words that's giving me pause to think about language now, because people aren't using alternative facts in the sense and it wasn't meant to be used. I don't think Kellyanne, I think she thought about it afterwards. But they were trying to make a lie a fact, and it wasn't. And we do a lot of that today. We try to make lies into facts. The lie that you don't have to pay taxes. The lie that you don't have to have a driver's license. You don't have to have your car registered. Those are lies. They're not true. They're not alternative facts. They're flat out lies. And if we're gonna communicate, and we're gonna use language that we both agree with and understand, we have to agree and understand on words and the language that we use. You follow? And so I think what we'll do is go ahead, Jackie. What were you gonna say?
No, I got you.
Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and bring this to a close. I know, especially the first parts of it was kind of long and drug out, but I wanted to try to set some sort of a foundation and basis for what I wanted us to kind of end with for today's episode. We'll go ahead and continue this probably next week, because we really haven't gotten as deep into the language thing as I wanted to get into. Just based
because I'm over here thinking like, what's the ending of this? I know you got something in mind, but I know it's not just we're gonna keep it on the surface like this.
Right.
Might believe it's going somewhere.
Oh yeah. But yes, exactly. But we just didn't want to go there, and then people be wondering, how in the hell did we get here? It's going to be slow and boring. It'll probably be a little slow and a little boring, and people will be scratching their head and tuning out probably. But in order to get to where, yes, but I want us to try to get there, because, like I said, we're eventually going to get into communication, the communication itself. But again, like I said, because language is so important in it, we need to kind of cover that first. Any last comments, folks?
Question. I got a question.
Go ahead.
Do we have, and I think if I follow where you go with this, the question I was posed, and we don't have to address it today, is there a lack of communication or a inability to understand?
Yeah. And Jackie, that's a really, really good question. And please remind me or message me, and we'll talk. We'll make sure we cover that probably the next episode, because I think that's a very, very a good question that we should address. So remember that question. Text it to me, and I'll make sure that I put it on our list of discussion to discuss.
But can I say this? And the only reason I say this is because I'm never going to understand what I don't want to understand.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. So I'll speak that to you in the text box.
Yeah. That's a so now that's a heavy statement there, Jackie. Yeah, that's a heavy, and I think there's a lot to what you just said. There's a lot to what you just said. Okay, good. What about you, Mike?
Not really.
Okay.
I enjoy you guys. I'm inspired. I believe language is very important. I mean, in every day of your life, whether you're talking to a child or an adult, a spouse or a friend, it's very important, and it would dictate how that relationship goes. So, very happy to be here. Very excited. Looking forward to next week.
All right. Great. All right then. All right. Thank you, guys.
All right now. All right. Thank you, man.
Think it through, people.